All right. Speeding is live streamed. Got it. All right. Okay, we're about to get started again. And I had read last time that Esther had made this command to Mordechai, etc. And then, but right, she doesn't say what it is. And because according to Targum Rishon, the command was something else. So then Targum Rishon had to come back again and say, and then she not only did she make that command to Mordechai to stop riling Haman up, but she also put the following words into his mouth. And I was talking about this notion of there being a gatekeeper, which is so common that we take it for granted. It's not even particularly odd that this is going on. What was exceptional about this case was that Targum Rishon says this rule about whoever comes without permission getting killed, unless the king overrides the standing rule, that was a rule that Haman had gotten put in place. In other words, Haman was really trying as much as possible to control access to the king. But it was with the king's, right, Almei Mar Achashverosh, it was with Achashverosh's consent. Okay. And so that was that was as far as we got, right? Unless the king Yoshit le Malkayat Tigda Dahaba. This is the golden scepter. And the person will live. Va'ana, says Esther, and I, la it kareti, the meo, levat malka den zman platin yomin, and I haven't been called for this last 30 days. And one more verse. And it says, wrong. Okay. And then it says, the next verse in the Megillah says, V'yagidu l'Mordechai et divrei Esther. And they told Mordechai the words of Esther. Now, until now, there's been hatach going back and forth between them, right? And hatach, we're told that he's Daniel. And so that works because they're talking straight out about the Jews being Esther's people. And how can, but at this point, she hasn't told the king or Haman or anybody else that she's Jewish. She's still hiding her national origin. And so how can they be talking about it openly? Because it only makes sense if this hatach is also a Jew, possibly also a Jew in hiding or whatever. But it turns out, it makes perfect sense why Chazal identify hatach as being Haman. Okay, but all of a sudden now you have Vayagidu, and they told Mordechai the words of Esther. Wait a second. What happened to hatach? Right? And so we're going to look at how Targum Rishon deals with that verse, and then we're going to go over and look at Targum Sheni on these same two verses. So Targum Rishon says, "V'chad chaza Haman Rishia yat hatach dishmei Daniel e'al v'nafek levat Esther utkef rugzebe ukatle." And when this is totally not in the Megillah, okay, this is stuff that Targum Rishon is adding in to explain. And when Haman the wicked saw hatach, whose name is actually Daniel, entering in and coming out by Esther, his anger got very violent at him. He got extremely angry at hatach, and he had him killed. Right? Which explains why hatach wasn't the one who told who told Mordechai what Esther had said. Haman not only wanted to limit access, what you can get from Targumei is that he not only wanted to limit access to the king, he wanted to limit access to the queen as well. Okay, and when he saw that this Hatach, who was Daniel, who was left over from earlier reigns, okay, because Daniel had served Nebuchadnezzar and had served Evil Merodach and had served Belshazzar and had served Koresh, etc. So when he saw that this old man who, had been the highest of the high in previous administrations was still having access, he got so angry he had him killed. And so therefore, but how are the words supposed to get to Mordechai, right? So is Damnu Taman Michal v'Gavriel Malachaya. So Michal and Gavriel were brought there, were invited there, as it were, by Kadosh Baruch Hu, the angels, that Michal and Gavriel. V'chaviu l'Mordechai yad pitkamei Esther. And they're the ones who told, that explains why it's plural, okay? They're the ones who told Mordechai the words of Esther. Now, that's how Targum Rishon deals with our verses. Targum Sheni deals with it differently. Okay, so here we go. All right. And I'm going to open it up just, there we go. All right, so at verse 10, Targum Sheni didn't have any problem, didn't add anything in. Okay, just Esther said to Hatach and commanded him to Mordechai. So because it didn't add anything in, they didn't have to then go back again and say, and Esther put these words into his mouth. Targum Sheni isn't going to have to do that. On the verse about everybody knows, it starts off the same way. It doesn't add in the business about that this decree came from Haman. Call Avdoi the Malka, all of the servants of the king, Va'amadi b'medinate the Malka Yadin, and all of the people in the provinces of the king know. Dikol gvar v'itata diye'u levat Malka lepaltering gviata, that any man or woman that will enter into the king to the palace, the inner palace, okay, bidla mitkare, without being called, he gzerte lemiktal. There is a law, a decree that they should be put to death. Elohein, for people who are interested in the Aramaic, Elohein is not related to like Elohim or something like that, which you might have thought. It's our word Ella, rather. Okay? Oshit le malka yat sharvita de dahava v'yiche. Rather, the king extends to the person. That's the only way that the person's going to be able to live. The king will extend to him the golden scepter, and the person will live. But Anna, says Esther, and now Targum Sheni is going to add in stuff for us. Anna, ha tlatin yomin matsalia, dila ibai yat malka v'yachte yati. I have been davening for the last 30 days that the king won't desire me and cause me to sin. Why? Dekad haved midravia levatach, because when I was growing up by you, okay, in other words, I was a girl, I was gadol, but like shegadalti etzlacha, right? When I was growing up by you, haveta amarli, you would tell me to call itata min benat Yisrael, de tezel v'tishkebe im amamaya min tzvat nafsha, leit la chulak v'aksanta b'nei shiftaya. That any Jewish girl who would go and have intimate relations with a non-Jew, out of her own desire, the desire of her own soul, she doesn't have any portion amongst the tribes of Israel, Shivtaya Yisrael. That is like a type of karet for her. And now Targum Sheni also has to deal with why we don't have Hatach continuing to be the go-between. So they also put in Ba'al dahava Hatach shlicha bein Esther leMordechai, since Hatach had been the messenger between Esther and Mordechai, to Kef Rugze Dahaman, Aloi Uktaliate. Haman's anger was very strong against him, and he had him killed. It doesn't quite follow as simply as it does from Targum Rishon. Okay, in Targum Rishon, we saw Haman wanting to be the gatekeeper, not only for the king, also for the queen. He doesn't necessarily know that Hatach is going from the queen to Dafka to Mordechai, who is somebody that Haman is not happy about, but rather he just sees that Hatach is coming and going and doing things for the queen, and that's what upsets him. That's for Targum Rishon. Here, you get more of the possibility that it's because it's Bein Esther Mordechai, because it's Mordechai. And here it could be that the possibility is that the reason that he had Hatach killed is because of Mordechai more than because of the queen. Okay. And then the next verse, okay, that last verse of they told, right? They told Mordechai. But Taniu Mordechai v'katvin yad pitkemei Esther. So the Taniu, we said, was more like Vishinantam. It was repeated over to Mordechai, but not, here we don't have the angels as part of the story. Rather, it was repeated over Bakatvin. It was written down. Okay. When Esther realized evidently that Hatach had been put to death or exiled out of the way. Anyway, he's no longer available to her. So she wrote down what she needed to communicate, and she sent sealed letters that the messengers didn't know what was going on because, right, Esther's still trying to keep secret that she's a Jew. All right. We're going to go back now to the Megillah itself, and we're going to read the next few psukim in the Megillah and in Targum Rishon. Okay, so now what happens? So, Vayomer Mordechai lahashiv el Esther. And some of the most famous words, I guess, in the Megillah, I think, although there are a lot of very famous phrases, but Mordechai says to return to Esther, to give a response to Esther. And what does he say? Al tidami benafshech lihimaleit beit hamelech mikol Yehudim. Don't imagine that for yourself to escape in the palace, in the house of the king, from all the Jews. Don't think that you're going to, somehow because you're in a privileged place, a privileged position, that means that you're going to escape. Ki'im hecharesh tacharishi be'et hazod revach v'hatzala ya'amod la Yehudim mimakom acher va'at u'beit avich tovedu. Because if you are silent, if you keep yourself silent at this time, revach, surcease, and hatzalah, and salvation, okay, will be found for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will be lost. Mi yodea im le'et kazot, he got the malchut. And who knows if it's for a time like, literally, if it's for a time like this that you arrived at your position of royalty, In English, it would probably go smoother. Normally, we would add in a lo. I was talking about this with another friend the other day, and we were learning. There's a place where in English we make it explicit, right? Who knows if it weren't for a time like this? That's how you say it in English. It sounds better in English that way, but in Hebrew, the lo is not there. All right. And in the Aramaic, it's also not going to be there. It's fine. Okay. So Mordecai responds, and this is what his response is. Targum Sheni, excuse me, Targum Sheni is not too much longer than the original story in the Megillah. And it says, V'chad chaza haman rishaya. Oh, so, but I'm sorry, we did that one already. That was how the angels got involved. The Amar Mordechai Michal Gabriel. Okay, yada. So Mordechai knows he's talking to these angels, and he says to Michal and to Gabriel, La atava levat Esther kidna temuna. To respond to Esther like the following, you should say to her, La tachshavi b'nafshaychu. Rather than don't imagine, it's don't think in your soul, to yourself. Lemahach ishtezva b'beit malka min kol Yehudai. That you will go to be saved in the house of the king from all the Jews, that because you're in this place of privilege, that you will be saved. Mishtak shtoki. Okay, so instead of the word hacharesh tacharishi, okay, it's if you will, right? Shtok is a word we use in Hebrew to mean shut up. If you'll, but it's also a word we use like to mean like a shtikat moach is a stroke when your brain shuts down. Okay, so if you'll hold back from speaking. Okay, be'idna hada at this time, v'la tafgi'i al Yehuda'e, and you won't. Now, this word pega, in modern Hebrew, we tend to relate this shorish to the word pigua, and it's a very fraught word for us. But in Tanakh, and in Chazal, pega is one of the 10 words that refer to a type of prayer. Okay. V'yifga b'makom. Okay, so it's by one of the avot that they like suddenly met the place of where they could speak out to Hashem and they could daven. And so the language means to pray. And if you don't pray on behalf of the Jews, nonetheless, Ravacha v'shezvuta, okay, that's Ravacha, you hear is the same word. Shezvuta is the salvation. It's sometimes used for Yeshua, although there we also get Purkan. But this Hatzalah, the saving, Yakum, Yehudai min atar acharan will stand up, will be found for the Jews from a different place. Why? There is no why in the pasuk, right? It says mimakom acher, and then it says, "And you in your father's house, you're going to be lost." Okay, so Targum Rishon is now going to put information in after this mimakom acher from this other place. What is this other place? Okay, or why? Begin zechut avahat alma, because of the merit of the avot haolam, the forefathers. Whether he means avot haolam, who that this zechut lasts forever, in that sense of like la'olam va'ad. Whether he's specifically referring to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, or whether he is referring to, like Adam and Noach and Shem ve'Ever, but because of the Avot Olam, the Jews are the descendants. Okay, it doesn't make any sense. The world can't get to the end of the story without the Jews still being in the story. So for sure, they're going to be saved. Okay, the question is whether you're going to be saved, and don't think that just because you're in the king's palace that means that you're going to be saved, because nothing's going to work that way. But the Jews are going to be saved because of the zchut of the Avot Olam. V'yisheziv yaton mare alma, and the master Rabbono Shalom, the master of the world, is going to save them. Min yad balei devavehon, from the hand of their enemies. And gnisat beit avahatach tovda, but you and the family of your lineage, the house of your fathers, will be lost. Why will you be lost? Okay, I mean, if everybody's being saved, why are you going to be lost? So again, right, we have a reason being given. Al hahi chovata, because of that sin. Which sin? Manhu. And what is it? Oh, okay. No, you think that that's what they're, no, but manhu is not what is it. Manhu is who is it. Okay. And because he's now translating this part here, because of that sin. All right. So Targum Rishon was the one that told us at the beginning that the reason that this decree had come down was because the Jews had eaten at the feast that Achashverosh had given 9 years earlier. When the Kalim were brought out and Achashverosh was wearing the big day of the Kohen, was wearing the clothing of the regalia of the Kohen Gadol, etc., and they didn't object and they didn't cry and they didn't tear kriya over it. They just sat there and they had a nice time at the party. And because of that, so according to Targum Rishon, that was what Targum Rishon said. So that's why the Beit Din Shel Mala had agreed to this decree that came out against the Jews. So we're still in, this is the same Targum Rishon, and the story is consistent within each Targum. Excuse me. I'm not completely over my cough, close, but not completely. Okay. And so he says, Uman hu chachima di yinda in l'shata da'atya be'idna hada at matila mechsan machut. Okay. And who is the wise person who would know if it's for, in other words, and in English, again, you would want a not there, but it's this, the Aramaic and the Hebrew have the same syntax. If it's for a time like this that you reached the position of royalty. Okay. It doesn't really explain. The only thing I can think of for al hahi chovata is the sin that they were talking about earlier, and why specifically she and her father's house. It isn't yet explained how Targum Rishon is connecting the dots here. But Targum Sheni has a slightly different story to tell us. So let's go take a look at Targum Sheni. Okay, whoops, here it is, on the same two verses. And it's much longer, and it's going to take the rest of my time. Okay, so we are at Pasuk Yud Bet. Now, we already did Pasuk Yud Bet. I'm sorry, we're at Pasuk Yud Gimel. We're going to do Yud Gimel and Yud Dal and Zo. Okay. V'amar Mordechai la'atava ta'ama le'Esther. And Mordechai said to respond, not just words, but ta'ama, a reason. Now, the Pachegim Ktav translates Targum Sheni. Targum Sheni is an original work in Aramaic. It is loosely based on the Megillah, and it's providing a lot of hashkafa and a lot of agadata, and sometimes just brings in all sorts of other things because they can, because they want to, whatever. We're going to see some of that today and some of that next week as well. But because Aramaic is no longer a spoken language by most Jews, there's some Kurdish Jews who still speak it, and it's not even the same Aramaic as Targum Sheni is. So because of that, we have it was translated, Targum Sheni was translated into Hebrew, and the translation into Hebrew was called Patshegen HaKtav. So Patshegen HaKtav is the Hebrew version of Targum Sheni. It's not the Megillah. It's not that they took Targum Sheni and made it back into the Megillah. No, they took Targum Sheni, they translated it, and the translation is not a word-for-word translation of Targum Sheni. And sometimes they leave things out, and sometimes they also add things in, and so, but it's much closer in spirit and in language to Targum Sheni than Targum Sheni is to the Megillah itself. Okay. So Mordechai says to respond, Tamad, to take a word, to take a reason, whatever, back to Esther. Dilma tidamin benafshik, lest you should think, okay, in your soul, or think to yourself, v'tamrin, and you say, di she, asher, Ana is damnit b'malchut lemeve machta. I was prepared and sort of invited, brought into this place of royalty to be the queen. And Dilma tachshavin b'libech v'tamrin leit ana tzricha l'mibai rachmin al beit Yisrael. And so here I am. I'm in this position of privilege and of power, and I don't have to worry about stuff. That I'm, like my salvation was already prepared for me before the problem occurred, and all I have to do is just sit back and be quiet. Now, okay, and lest you should think that therefore I don't need to request mercy on the house of Israel. De'in rigle dechad min. Oops. Next page here. Okay, and it's not the. Even I'm having dechad min. Wow. I should get the Sefer itself out so I can read it. That word is a little hard to read there. Perhaps you'll think, I think it's Mihudai, Mitnakfa. Okay, don't think that, that because what? Because if the leg of a single Jew will sort of fold up from under him, in other words, he'll fall. Right? La takshavim benafshik ta'ant mishtazara. Right? That if the Jews start to fall, don't think that you are going to be saved min kol Yisrael, that you're going to be saved out of all of Israel. Mahmat. And now we get an explanation of why Beit Avich is going to be lost. And we also are going to get some absolutely beautiful, we call it Musar, just absolutely beautiful Emunah and B'tachon, right? A Musar Shmuz here. Okay? Machmat Shaul, avoid the Avuch. This whole thing is happening because of Shaul, your father's ancestor. De garam lahon l'Yisrael yat bishata hada, because he's the one who caused for Israel, this evil. Because if he would have just done exactly what Shmuel the Navi had said to him, Lana fik alana haman rishaya mizare debate Amalek. There would not have come out against us this Haman the wicked, who is of the descendants of the house of Amalek, right? And if Shaul would have killed Agag the king, Alana Bar Chamdata Haden. Then this Bar Chamdata, right? That was Chamdata was Haman's father's name. This son of Chamdata wouldn't have come out against us because he would never have been in the world, right? V'la zabin yatana ba'asra alfin kikare kaspa min yadoy demacha achashverosh. And he wouldn't have bought us for 10,000 kikar of silver from the hands of the king Achashverosh. V'la masar kudsha brichu yat Yisrael b'yada. And God would not have handed Israel over into his hand of the train Rasheen of these two wicked people, meaning Haman and Achashverosh. Okay, so you and your father's house, you as a descendant of your father's house, right? That's the implication here, have an obligation to clean up your mess. You made the mess, and mind you, Mordechai is not excluding himself because he's also a descendant of Shaul HaMelech. Okay, but we made the mess. It's our job to clean it up. Okay, Demin Shiruya. I really need to try to see if I can get you guys a better picture. Okay, Demin Shiruya la ata lehon de Beit Yisrael ela Amalek. Avoid the Haman Rishia, but Agach Chava im Yoshua bar Nun Berfida, right? That Demin Shiruya here means, according to Pachak and Katab, means from the very beginning, in the beginning. Okay. Nobody came against Am Yisrael except for Amalek, who was the father of Haman. Nobody sought to mess with the Jews. Egypt was a shambles. The sea and all the waters in the world had just split. Like, who in their right mind is going to mess with the Jews, right? Hashem yilachem lachem. God is fighting on their side, our side. Who's going to mess with us? Nobody's going to mess with us. Came along Amalek, okay, and he, right, who's the father of the father, right, the ancestor of this Haman, okay, and he Agach Chava, he set up in battle with Yehoshua ben Nun at a place called Refidim. Okay, I'm dipping in to see this because I don't have a good text here for you. I apologize. Kitzlota de Tzale Moshe Rabbeinu itmeche decharna de Amalek min alma. And then Moshe Rabbeinu davened that the Zecharon of Amalek, Zecher Amalek, should be erased from the world. That happened at Refidim. Okay. Baram, therefore, Kumi ubi rachmin min kadam avuk di bishmaya. Therefore, get up and request mercy and love from your Father who's in heaven, meaning Kadosh Baruch Hu, right? Al Amad Beit Yisrael, on the people of the house of Israel. And now we get the Moshe Shmuz. And it's a beautiful Moshe Shmuz. It's like it's so not fire and brimstone. The Targum, excuse me, Targum Sheni has a sweetness to it. And he says Demand avidina bekadmai, hu avidina bebatrai. That the one who made judgment on the first one, in other words, on the Malaki at Refidim, let him be the one who will do judgment on the latter ones, meaning on Haman. Min manhu takif Haman Rishia. Really, who is Haman stronger than? You think, miman it kaimit gezerte, and who do you think is going to, have the last word? Whose decree is going to stand? Right? Is it Haman or is it God? Really, you think it could possibly be Haman? But then he says, and then he gives example after example after example. Min Amalek, avoid the avoid. Da'ata Lehon al de Beit Yisrael. You think that Haman is stronger than Amalek was? His ancestor who came against the Jews. Utrad yate kudshabricho min alma, and Baruch Hu exiled him, erased him from the world. Min man hu takif. Who is he stronger than? Min tlatin v'chad malchaya hu takif. Is he stronger than the 31 kings of Canaan? Okay. The Achan Alehon al de Beit Yisrael, because after they saw that Amalek could do it, so they got the chutzpah to think that they could also fight against us, right? Unafak Alehon Yoshua bar Nun b'milta d'shmai uktal yatom. But Yoshua ben Nun went out against them according to the word of heaven, and he killed them. Min man hu takif. Who is he stronger than? Is he stronger? Min Sisra hu takif. You think he's stronger, mightier than Sisra? Da'ata alehon al de Beit Yisrael b'tcha mea artichin de farzala, that came against Israel with 900 rechav barzel, 900 iron chariots at a time when Am Yisrael was still in the Bronze Age. So iron or steel is was much stronger metal, and you think that we wouldn't have had a chance, but nonetheless. V'achad alehon guvin demaya b'midam d'la yitpulun v'la yezlun nasha levalehon. And achaz, and what did Sisra and these 900 chariots do? Not just that they besieged the cities, but they closed down all the mikvahot so that women could not toivel and they couldn't go to their husbands. V'la yivshun v'la yiskun ba'alma, in order that Am Yisrael not be able to procreate and become many in the world. Right? They figured if we just put an end to, it's like lahavdil, but it's like, Paro says, we'll kill off the babies and then there won't be any more of that. So Sisra says, forget killing off the babies. Let's just prevent them from making babies and then there won't be any more of that. All right. And you think that Haman's decree against us, genocidal decree against us, is stronger than that decree that Sisra made? But what happened? Umasar Yate kudshabrichu v'yad itata uktalat yate. And this Sisra, Hashem handed him over to the hand of a woman, right? Ya'al bat chevra kene, and she killed him. Min manhu takif das Haman Rishia. Who do you think this Haman Rishia is stronger than? Min Galia? Do you think he's stronger than Galia? Ta'ata v'chasid yat sidre Krava Yisrael. So this word chassid, like I was like, what? But the Goliath came and he disparaged the Jews. He shamed them. They were all set up, this Sidre Krava, set up like an orderly army camp, etc. And he went back and forth in front of them. And if you remember the story and read Sefer Shoftim, and he made fun of them, and he tried to make them small in their own eyes. And of course, he himself is very large, right? Because this is Galia. Okay. But he was handed over to David, and David killed him. Min man hu taki. Who is he stronger than? Min banaha da arpa hu taki. Now this is the Galiat story all over again, right? Because who is the son of Orpah? The son of Orpah is Galiat. Okay, so we're going to say the Galiat thing twice, just to pound it home. Okay, who is he stronger than? From the sons of Orpah, he's stronger. Da'ato v'agcho Kava in Beit Yisrael that came and went to war against Am Yisrael. V'itmasru biyad David ubiyad avdoi v'ktalu yatan. Okay, and so not only Galiat, but all the people who were mitzvah to him, all the people who came with him, were handed over to David and David's servants, and they were put to death. Baram la titmanin pumech min salo. And so therefore, don't withhold your mouth from davening. V'sifvatich min l'mivaye rachmin min baryach. Baryach, yaich maybe. Nor your lips from requesting mercy from your Creator. U'l'mitzale debizchut ahavatana ishtezvu Yisrael min katala. And that what should your tefillah be? That in the zchut of our avot, that Am Yisrael should be saved from death. Uman da'aviv da'avad liYisrael nisin b'kol idan v'idan, and let the one who has done miracles for Am Yisrael in every time and season, hu yimsor yatz na'ana b'yadana, let him hand over the one who hates us into our hands, v'na'abed b'hon k'ru'ut nafshana, and let us do to them according to the will of our soul. Ra'ut here is not the Hebrew word ra'ut, it means ratzon. Baram la tadamin b'nafshich Esther da'ant mishtazva bebeit malka min kol Yehuda. And don't you imagine in your soul, Esther, that you are going to be saved in the palace out of all the Jews. That was one verse. We have one more to go. Ella im. See, Targumei is much longer, right? Ella im mishla tashlin bidana hadav. If you will be silent at this time, kadishehon ufurkanehon diyudae matzmach lahom porkana ma'atar ochan. Their kadishe and their porkana, right? So in Sefer Daniel, we hear about Irva Kaddish. Irva Kaddish are two different levels of angels. The Kaddish is the one who actually carries out. This is according to Malvin, right? The one who actually carries out the missima, the mission that they're given by God, and Porknehon, the same forces that have always saved the Jews are going to matzmach lahom porkana me'ata achran. There will sprout for the Jews this Yeshua. That porkana is usually more Yeshua rather than Hatzalah, okay, from a different place. But you and your father's house, right? Because you're the ones who set up the problem. If you don't help clean it up, then you and your father's house will be lost. Dilma de Vin Chove Beit Avuk Krevat Machuta. And who knows, perhaps it's this calculation of the debts. Read choveh here as debts rather than necessarily as chata'im. Okay, of your father's house, that's what has brought you to the malchut. Da-da. Right? Although I tried to read it as debts, that's my modern Hebrew speaking. Pachak and Katav says, and who knows if it's on the issue of squaring accounts of the avonot, right, of the sins of your father's house, that's why you got to the malchut, that you were put in place so that you could clean it up. But if you choose not to, then just erase the whole essek. Get rid of all of it. All right. I wish everybody a wonderful, wonderful week. Mirz Hashem, next week we'll actually do this in Efrat, and Mirz Hashem, next week there will not be technical takalot and problems, so that the whole thing will go much more smoothly. And we will finish chapter 4 next week, and Mirz Hashem maybe even start in on chapter 5. As we've seen, sometimes, like the first week took an hour plus to do one verse, and then the next week we did from 2 to 10, and so I can predict only because I go over it, but I can't, there's no way to say, oh, we're going to do 5 psukim a week. It doesn't work that way. But we will, Mirz Hashem, finish chapter 4 next week. And I hope that everybody who listens to this gets great simcha from it. Marbin v'simcha. Thank you so much. Stop my share.